for tuning in to Naturally Beautiful. My name is Janelle, and the focus of my channel is going to be on natural hair care and growing our hair long, strong, and healthy. So today I will be focusing on healthy hair tips and really giving you steps to achieve healthy hair and growing your hair long and strong. So the first step I would like to draw attention to is finding your hair type and finding out what your hair type is. And what that means is finding out your hair porosity, your hair texture, and also your hair density. I feel like these three factors play a role in finding out your hair type. And what that means, going in depth into porosity, what porosity means is how our hair absorbs moisture. It's the rate of absorption. Pretty much it tells you how quickly water is absorbed into your hair strands. So to think about your hair strand, your hair strand has basically cuticle levels. So all of our hair strands have cuticles. Either our cuticles lay flat or they lay open. And if your hair cuticles lay flat, that really means that you have low porosity hair. If your hair cuticles lay open, that means that you have high porosity hair. That means water is easily drawn in, but also easily drawn out. So what we really want to understand is how we can moisturize our hair. And that leads into step 2. Step 2 is once you figure out your hair type, that can easily allow you to find products that work. And what we really want to look for in products, especially if you're trying to wear your hair natural, you want a moisturizer, you want a sealant, and you want a styler. And all of those factors play into your hair type. So again, once you find out your hair type, it's easy to find out basically what products you would need in terms of a moisturizer, a sealant, and a styler. And then once you find that, then we can start looking into step 3, which is deep conditioning. Deep conditioning plays an important role. We always want to be deep conditioning your hair. I find I had the best results when I started incorporating deep conditioners into my regimen every wash day. So that's very important. It literally helps your hair remain strong and healthy, and it really brings the nutrients to your hair. And how you deep condition is, again, relative to your hair type. That's why hair type plays the most primary role into a healthy hair regimen. And then step 4. Step 4 is basically low manipulation. And that's a very broad category, but with low manipulation, that leads to, it can pretty much branch off to a lot of different things. It can branch off to the tools you use, to the way you style your hair, to the way you basically manipulate your hair. So in terms of, and also how you sleep with your hair as well. So in terms of that, the tools. I find a lot of us want to use combs. And I find combs, depending on, I guess a wide tooth comb is a better version of a comb, but having a very fine tooth comb, that's really designed for someone who has straight hair. Someone who's in, if you think of hair texture as that type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, we're really talking about type 1, type 2, where you would want to use combs in your hair, because combs is designed to kind of rip through tangles and is easily able to kind of glide through a hair strand that's pretty much thin and straight. So you really want to use combs in a thin and straight hair type. When you have type 3, type 4 curls, that's when you're going to want either to be finger detangling, which is what I incorporated into my regimen, which has helped me a lot. Finger detangling, also a tangle teaser. If you guys don't know what it is, insert picture here. Basically, a tangle teaser is a type of brush that is specially designed to not rip through your curls. It's designed to kind of glide through your curls so you're not pulling and tugging at your curls and losing hair. The most important thing is to retain length. That's why low manipulation helps us to retain length and we don't see as much breakage. So again, tools is a very important factor. Another important factor is basically protective styling. That can be weaves, braids, wigs, pretty much any kind of thing that is allowing you to not be manipulating your hair as often. With a protective style, you could probably have it for weeks. So again, your hands are not in your hair, you're not being able to manipulate your hair, you're not losing hair, which is very important. So that could be doing maybe a braid out or twist out, or just any kind of thing that you don't have to be playing with your hair on a daily basis. That helps us to retain length so we're not seeing breakage as frequent. And then also the way you sleep at night. If you're using a satin pillowcase, if you're using a bonnet, if you're using a satin scarf, that's all stopping from your hair being manipulated. It's pretty much providing a barrier so that we're not rubbing against our pillows when we're sleeping up against our covers and losing hair. So that provides, again, a low manipulation kind of barrier to your hair. And that's the fourth step. So in regards to hair type, I know a lot of people have a lot of questions on how I find out what my hair type is, which plays an important role, again, into finding the products that work for you. So I'm going to insert in the description box below the website where I found a lot of my information from, which is naturallycurly.com. They literally have a test that helps you analyze porosity, which I find is, again, the most important thing to know, your hair porosity. So obviously they explain it better, but pretty much what you get a glass of water, room temperature water, you get a clean strand of hair, you place it in the water, and if your hair floats, you have low porosity hair. If your hair sinks immediately, you have high porosity hair. If it sinks, but it takes a bit, like probably 1 to 2 minutes, and then it eventually sinks, you have medium porosity. So in that kind of helps you, again, find out how you're going to be able to moisturize your hair, which, again, I find is the most important thing. If you're not moisturizing your hair properly, your hair is going to be dry. And that's why a lot of times we find our hair dry, because we're not learning how to moisturize our hair properly. So again, in regards to porosity, so if you do have low porosity hair, what you're going to want is a thin moisturizer. And that's the thing, people assume, since technically with low porosity hair, your cuticles lay flat, we assume that water doesn't really go to our hair can't be moisturized. That's not true. It can be moisturized, it just takes probably a longer time for it to be absorbed. Also, you're going to want a thinner moisturizer. I see a lot of people with low porosity hair trying to use creams. Stay away from creams. That's not going to be able to be easily absorbed into our hair strands, because if you think about it, our cuticles are laying flat. It's not being able to get through to our hair strand. So you're going to want to either use a spray bottle leave-in, anything that's liquid in a bottle. When you start getting into jars, liquids and creams in jars, that's when you know it's too thick, it's not going to be able to penetrate our hair shaft. And then going into medium porosity. Medium porosity, you kind of have a bit of freedom. So with medium porosity, you can use a bit of a thicker, I would still stay away from creams, but a bit of a thicker leave-in, a leave-in that you probably have to squeeze out or pump out, that kind of leave-in, you're probably going to want something like that. So again, you don't want it to be too thick, but you don't want it to be too thin. You kind of want to be in that in-between category. And then going into high porosity, that's when you're going to want a thick leave-in. That's when you're going to want the creams. That's where you're going to want, thick leave-in that is not going to be easily, because the thing is that with high porosity hair, our cuticles lay open. So if you're starting to use thin conditioners like water and thin leave-ins, it's going to absorb at a fast rate, but it's also going to exit just as fast. So you want to slow down that process, so you're going to want a thicker cream so that it's not going to go in and it's not going to be easily released pretty much with a thicker cream. So that's pretty much what you want to follow in a guide for porosity. And then in regards to sealant, which is very important, that's another thing that people forget. We want to lock in that moisture. With any hair type, because the thing, people assume with low porosity hair, you probably don't need to lock it in because our hair cuticles lay flat. But it also depends on your hair, your curl pattern. That's another thing that plays a factor. So that's another thing we want to find out. And again, on naturallycurly.com, they have a nice kind of test, again, that you can kind of do that gives you an exact idea of what your curl type is. And again, leading into that type 3, which is a curly curl pattern, and type 4, which is a coily curl pattern or kinky curl pattern, that's when you're going to want to seal your hair with either a thicker butter or a thicker oil. Just because when you have a thicker curl pattern, oils from your scalp is not easily being able to draw from your scalp to the ends of your hair. So you still want to lock in that moisture. Probably if you had straight hair, you probably could just moisturize with water and that'll be fine. If you had low porosity hair with straight hair, you could moisturize with water and that'll be fine. Because again, oils are easily transferred from your roots to your ends. Once you start getting into a tight curl pattern, it's not easily drawn out. So you're going to want to add that oil, you're going to want to add that butter to seal that in. So again, probably with a type 3 pattern, you can use a light or a thick oil. With a type 4 pattern, you're going to want to use a butter. And that's what I kind of incorporated into my regimen, using a butter cream that I make personally. But yeah, a whipped shea butter cream that can allow your hair to be sealed and locked in. So don't think that that cream is providing moisture or that butter is providing moisture. What it's doing is locking in the moisture that you already added once you found out what your porosity is. And then in regards to that, then you can move on to a styler. And so if you're incorporating a wash and go into your hairstyle, that's when you're going to want to add some kind of styler. And what a styler does is provide hold. And when you have a type 3, type 4 hair type, you're going to want to hold that style because our hair is easily prone to frizz. And also this is when density plays a role as well. So with your density of hair, if you have thick hair, you're going to want to hold that style because again, your hair is going to get frizzy and you're going to lose that curl pattern. Because our hair, especially if you're in a kinky curl pattern, it's hard to define our curls because again, our curls are so thick, it's very coarse. So again, you want to provide that barrier, that thin kind of polymer, kind of thickener on the outside of your hair to kind of hold your style in place for a longer period of time. So again, density plays a role in that. So I find if you have a thin hair, and the way you can figure out your density again is from naturallycurly.com. There's a nice good description on how you can figure that out. But basically the kind of thing to keep in mind is how easily you can see your scalp. If you can part your hair, see your scalp very easily, you can kind of see, pretty much if your hair is thin, there's a lot of points in the shaft of your hair where you can see scalp. That's how you kind of know if your hair is thin. Obviously if your hair is dense, it's going to be harder to see your scalp. You could probably divide it, you could probably put things in your hair and it will be lost because your hair is very thick. So it's not you're not easily being able to find your scalp, see your scalp. That's kind of how you kind of figure out your density. And then once you figure out your density, that's when you kind of want to figure out what kind of styler would play a role. So I find light stylers are better if you have thin hair. So something like a light gel, probably even like a pomade, anything that's very light that's not providing too much hold is just kind of, again, a light style so that your hair can still have a bit of volume. Because again, adding that styler is going to kind of weigh down your hair. You're going to probably lose a bit of volume if you're using a gel that's too thick. That's why you're going to want something light. And then if you have a medium, that's when you kind of are in between. You don't want it too light, you don't want it too thick, you just kind of want that in between hold. And then once you're getting into thick hair, that's when you're going to want a thick style. You're going to probably want a gel that comes in a jar where you have to kind of dig your hand in and get that gel out. You're going to want a thicker gel to, again, kind of weigh your hair down and kind of define your curls and hold that style for a longer period of time so it's not prone to frizz. And that's pretty much what you would want to look for if you're trying to figure out what products are going to work and what I mean by when I talk about finding your hair type. And that makes a lot of your issues with retaining length, providing moisture, pretty much giving you a healthy hair care regimen. That's the most, if not the most important role in your hair care regimen. Okay, so thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Naturally Beautiful. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching.